Well, let's bring in former Assistant Defense Secretary for Europe and NATO under President Obama, Jim Townsend. And I can't help but to begin just asking about any hope left for the civilians inside that steel plant in Mariupol.
I'm afraid there's no hope. I've been thinking the same thing, some type of humanitarian corridor, something that can be done. But I'm afraid what the Russians are going to do is pound that steel plant from the air with missiles. They don't want to go in there and fight, as your reporting made out. That would be a very difficult fight for them. So what they'll do is they'll stand off and they'll just pound it. And we'll have a horrible humanitarian situation on our hands. We've seen this in Bucha. We've seen this in other parts of Ukraine, as well as in Syria. Grozny, Chechnya. This is what the Russians do, and I'm afraid we're going to see just a horrible sight in the coming days.
Yeah, so what do we need to do as we look at the Donbass? What do we need to do regarding weapon systems? Obviously, the United States and our NATO allies individually as countries have been sending a massive amount of weapons to Ukraine. But specifically, what do we need to do if what we're hearing from British intelligence is true, to make the Russian advance even more difficult?
Well, we're going to need to have armored vehicles in there. This is going to be a war of maneuver. The Russians are going to try to maneuver around and isolate Ukraine forces. This is open territory. This is tank country. And I think we're going to need to have armored vehicles. And you heard earlier about the artillery, the 155 millimeter artillery coming in from the Pentagon. They're going to need a lot more ammunition than this first load. They had 40,000 rounds go in. They're going to need more than that. And they're going to need more counter battery radar as well. So it's a matter of trying to meet force on force with the Russians, taking out those tanks and those armored personnel carriers that the Russians will be using to try to maneuver. It's a matter of hitting their artillery. The counter battery radars give us the opportunity, give the Ukrainians the opportunity to use the 155 millimeter howitzers to get at that Russian artillery. They need more artillery. We sent them 18 howitzers. They need more. My understanding is the Brits will be sending in more, and I think the U.S. will be sending in more as well. But this offensive has just begun, and it's going to be a war of attrition in a lot of ways and a war of maneuver, and it's going to be very violent. It's going to be unlike what we saw in Kyiv in terms of ambushes and the drone films of tanks being blown up by javelins. This is going to be something more reminiscent that we saw in World War II, quite frankly. It's going to be pretty brutal.
And Mr. Townsend, what have we learned in the last 2 months about the Russian military, both good and bad, that can be used as the military regroups now for this invasion that has begun in the east? Obviously, there's been a lot to study. There's been a lot of failure by the Russian military. They thought they were going to be sitting in Kyiv with their government in place at this point. But what do you take away from the last 2 months, excuse me?
Well, I take away a couple things. One is that they did make a lot of mistakes based on poor assumptions, poor intelligence, hubris in those early days. And so they have found this phase one to be pretty much a total failure, and they've now regrouped. Your reporting talked about they're going to be focused their mass now on the east instead of doing multiple things at once, which was that phase one. This phase two, they're going to combine into their mass. They're going to have shorter logistics lines, and they're going to move in with what they do best, and that is artillery. We have seen that in the 20th century. We're going to see it now, where they go in, and you're not going to see a lot of fancy tactical tricks. You're just going to see mass, and that's something that is a takeaway here. Is they frittered away one of the edge that they have, which is mass. They outnumber and they have more equipment than the Ukrainians have, but they frittered that away in that phase one. Now they've recuperated. They have put the mass together. It looks like they're going to adapt somewhat what they have been doing in earlier, so that they don't make those same mistakes. So that's one takeaway, is they're going back to their roots. They're going back to the triumph of mass on the battlefield. But the second takeaway is this: we cannot underestimate the the brutality of the Russians. We can't underestimate their ability to apply that mass and to win on the battlefield. We saw mistakes made earlier on. We saw that they made bad assumptions, but that doesn't mean they're going to do that again. We've got a big fight ahead. Ukraine has a big fight ahead. We'll see how much the Russians have adapted and learned from the earlier weeks of failure. But at the end of the day, they're going back to their roots, and they're going to put that mass on target, steel on steel, and we have to brace ourselves for this. And we have to make sure the Ukrainian military has the armor, the artillery, the ammunition, the drones to help in targeting. We've got to keep up this supply to them and not let them run out of ammunition.
Despite the fact that, as we've heard during the first phase of this war, that quantity has a quality of its own, and you're talking about that mass that the Russians are going to have. I wonder, looking at the problems they have in their military culture, looking at the problems they've had with logistics, despite that mass, despite that quantity, is this still a war the Ukrainians can win, even in the Donbass?
You know, we're going to have to see. I don't think anyone can really make a call at this stage. You're absolutely right about their problems in terms of the military culture, particularly. We've seen horrible examples of that. We've seen also the low morale, the low quality of their troops. But we've also seen picture after picture after picture of their armored, of their armor, of their armored personnel carriers, all types of battlefield equipment that they're pouring in there right now. And this idea about mass having its own value, this is where that kind of thing plays out, is in terrain like this. And so my feeling is that despite these problems that they have, that mass is going to have a momentum that it will start off with. And if Ukraine can blunt that momentum, if Ukraine can hold them, can make them bloodied, can be kept supplied by the West, and so that mass begins to attrit and becomes weaker, then we might have a chance. The West might have a chance. Ukraine will have a chance to see that Russian offensive stall out. But it's going to be the next week and a half where Ukraine's going to have to hold on. It's going to have to blunt this mass and the momentum behind it, bloody them, so attrition then can take place, and those armored vehicles and their own drones and their infantry begin to be whittled away. That's the only hope. If we can get there, maybe we can get to a stalemate.